All right, so surviving and thriving in this crisis, and what can you do? So the first things I'm going to do is really kind of show you the best practices of families, and no one will be doing all of these best practices, but at least gives you a template for success of what helps a lot of families do really well in normal times and abnormal times and crisis times and family grieving times, but it's just a model of family health. So that's what I'm going to talk about with you tonight. So, how do successful families navigate crises? How do you structure and plan your life around flexibility, but also so that everybody's needs get met in the family? I see the parents as the executive function and having that facilitative and authority over the family system. So you need to have a strong executive function with mom or dad, or just mom, or just dad, or dad and dad, or just one person in that executive role. But that executive role is very important in the family. And then we're going to talk about the dynamics of a family meeting that really make things work really well for people and families as well. So we'll ask you some questions about that. So the Olsons, David Olson, did some work around two kind of ideas in a family. And the two best ingredients for family health are the notion of cohesion and whether the family is adaptable to changes in the family. So it's cohesion, how cohesive is the family, and how is adaptable is your family. So I'm going to talk about cohesion is really the glue in the family. It's the reason we're together. Um, what is the sort of binding elements in the family? So the way that Olson thinks about cohesion in the family is that there's a continuum on being very rigidly cohesive and very loose. So to give you an example from the world, a rigid authoritarian cohesion would be like North Korea type of family. And an anarchy family that's not very cohesive, where everyone goes their own way and there's not much glue in the family, would be that. So let's say that a non-cohesive family that's pretty much anarchy is one, and a highly cohesive family that's over authoritarian would be 10. Where do you think your family lies on that continuum? If you could chat in. So democracy would fall somewhere in the middle, slightly authoritarian, with the parents having a little bit more executive authority, and the family would be 6 and 7. Um, Majority rules 5. A little less than that, 3 and 4 would be, kind of a loose organization where everyone's going their own way. So where do you think your family is on cohesion? Okay, good, good. All right. Well, those are very common answers, and there's no right or wrong answer here. I think the polls are wrong. Uh, Super authoritative and anarchy aren't really good. So it's nice to see people are putting up middles. So what does it mean to have a family that's really in that 5, 6, or 7 category? Well, their mission and vision, why they are together, is pretty clearly articulated. So, what is our reason? What is our why to be together as a family? And some people use their religious and spiritual beliefs as part of that mission. Other people use that clear mission as being helpful for other people, doing things for others instead of self. And what's the vision? Where do they want to see every family member go? Is to grow and develop in maturity and make a contribution to society, like life is for service. So anyway, that is it. It's not necessarily done by a ton of families, but just like in an organization, it makes sense to do it within your own family as well. The other thing is that what are your core values? What are the values that hold the family together? For instance, honesty, service to others. Along with mission and vision, it's really important to have some core values that everyone knows the lane that they're operating in of what's acceptable behavior in the family. What I also like to do when I'm working with families is I have them articulate what their ground rules for having conversations and discussions. What's important, and so they'll say, well, truth is important. Being non-judgmental is important. So we get a laundry list of ideas that are very idiosyncratic, meaning they're very special to that family. And those rules of engagement is how they have meetings, how they have conversations, confidentiality, no mean spiritedness, just say it, whatever it happens to be. It's the kind of rules are articulated by the family that makes it feel safe and comfortable. So that's usually is also done. So when there is a family meeting of sorts, everyone kind of knows what the expectations for success are. Just like you do on a team or uh, in an organization, you'll have ground rules for engagement, core values, or six key principles like Olive Garden has, is that they follow that. So the other part of Olson's work is how adaptable is the family? How flexible are they? On one extreme, there's a rigid holding to, say, cultural values, and there's no movement at all. So that would be like one. No, the adaptability is we're holding firm to our cultural values in the family, and flexibility would be 10, again, kind of an anything goes kind of thing. Well, we'll make up the rules as we go along. So there's a very permissive family environment, and or a very more strict family environment. So again, there's the whole idea here how much movement and adaptability as kids get older and as parents get older and grandparents get older. Are we adaptable to the circumstances, and how much do we hold firmly, rigidly, dogmatically to ideas? So one would be, you know, nothing changes, and 10 would be everything changes. So where do you think you are on the adaptability scale in your own family? One being, very, very concerned with holding things the same way they are, not much change, and 10 being tons of change in the family, whatever is okay, and then 5 being in the middle, that there's some change within the family, but there's also some guiding influences within the family. Okay, great. So those are good. So and again, these are not rules. It just tells you where my family is and what are my expectations in the family. So along with cohesion, the closeness in the family is, how much do we agree that there could be movement and adaptability? And a lot of you are in the plus 5 and 5, 6, or 7 category. So that's important. Yeah, that's a good point. So Meg said 7 for younger kids and 5 for older ones. That's an adaptability statement, is that as I see kids growing, more liberties are provided. And the firstborn has more freedoms than the 5-year-old who might be, a 10 and 5. So there's developmental transitions where the kids get to see that privilege and responsibility come along with age. So there's a constant balance between stability and change and cohesion, because kids need to individuate. By 16, they want to be with their peers more than their parents. And around age 12, your influence starts to really, you lose your influence. So it's good through the years up to about puberty, and then it starts to diminish. So cohesion diminishes. And for some families, it's a really, really hard transition because they want to keep the family close. So those are the dynamics that I think are important for you to think about with your own family. And that all of these things have to be developmentally appropriate, meaning that Okay, how much freedom do I allow? How much structure? How much safety? So it's a constant sort of thought in a parent's mind between safety and structure and freedom and initiative. And so providing enough structure for safety is always in the dynamic of a parent. So that's hard. You're always thinking about, well, I got to keep them safe. On the other hand, I also have to allow them, because they're not going to be with me the rest of their life, and I have to allow them freedom and responsibility. Okay, so I'm asking you this question. I think it's really important in a crisis where everybody is sequestered at home to have some structuring of the family life, and that includes the adults and the parents and the system. So I like, when I'm working with families, is to create this grid, and everyone has a checklist and structure for each day that involves school for children in school, and it involves employment and work if you're working at home. And these items have to be scheduled so that expectations are really clear. And you'll notice that there's self-care for all family members and for you as the executive function parenting. You can't just be working all the time. So Alex has put up this poll, and I want you to kind of endorse where you think you are. Do you have a daily schedule? Do your family members follow it? What do you think would happen if you actually did start to follow it better? It might make life more easy if everyone was on a plan. And I think the coronavirus is forcing this need more so than ever. And if you want to chat in about why, those of you who've said yes, have you found a benefit for the planning and being able to meet the expectations of everyone and yourself? So chat in and say, has the plan helped create a structure of life? And particularly for kids who may be special needs, who really need a structure, and you need a structure because you can't be on 24/7 with them. Has following a daisy schedule help? The plan makes sure that work doesn't spill into family life. So see, what we're trying to do is just have boundary setting, because when there's boundary setting, people feel safe, especially children. And you also know as an adult and as a parent, hey, I can do this for a while, but I will have my downtime. I will have my self-care time. And there's some things that we can all do together. It says here we're homeschooling. Oh, I didn't catch that. Would you read that one, Alex?
So Meg said, we're homeschooling a special needs kindergartner, so we have a highly structured plan now, and it has not been easy.
But it's better than no structure, I would bet, Meg, and that if you didn't have that structure, it would be way too adaptable, and everyone's time would just be putting out fires all day long. At least you have that, and if there's a way that your special needs child can get some self-soothing, and you create some self-soothing environments, it's really helpful. My husband and I are empty nester. So read that one, Alex.
Was from Rena. She said, my husband and I are empty nesters, so we are doing our own things. I have to make sure that I stop working and really listen to him when he wants to talk and spend time with me. I have to intentionally stop working.
And, I think what would help you and anyone else in that situation is that, you could just work all the time, you can recreate all the time, you could, have self-care all the time. I think the planning and the scheduling of it makes sure it comes to pass. When you go to bed at night and you create a checklist for the next day, your next day has so much better focus and agency for you. And then at the end of the day, you see that you've completed that list, and there's some self-satisfaction that comes with, wow, I set my goals and I achieved them. And I do think that the checklist and having special time with your partner and your kids is really, um, someone wrote, I vote for self-care all the time. Well, I kind of agree with you right now, because there's plenty of stress going on, so self-care is good. But all kidding aside, I think you can see the value in what I'm describing here. And if you really set the intentional all these times, your own time, your own work time, your own exercise time, then you'll have a balanced life and you won't get as emotionally hijacked and kids feel safe in that structure.
And
Any other comments? Do you want to say anything, Alex?
we did have one more comment. So earlier, Sue commented the plan makes sure that work doesn't spill into family life. And then she did follow that up also with our lunchtime has ended up being later and later the past few weeks. Then dinner gets pushed back later since no one's hungry by 6 p.m. So that too.
So then the reevaluating of that, wait a minute, what we set up has kind of morphed or migrated into something else. And let's, look at that and come back to that. That's a really nice segue to the next item, which is the Rockstar family has a family meeting once a week. So I want to describe what the family meeting is and why. The family meeting is a way for the family to convene for recognition of one another and accountability once a week. It's a powerful tool for parenting, for kids, for autonomy and responsibility. So, just like in a business, in a department, it ought to be the same time, same day, starts and ends on time, and have the same place each week. So, if it's in the kitchen, at the dining room table in the kitchen, or the breakfast nook once a week at blah 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 time, right after dinner or whatever. It's um, it's what needs to happen because this is the place where you can make adjustments to your schedule, to what's going on in the family, address issues. So it always begins with everybody sharing their highs and lows for the week. So a child might say, well, I got a 80 on my algebra test this week. And so that's the highs, maybe, or these were the lows for the week. I haven't seen or heard from this friend that I love so much, and it's painful. So every family member goes around in the meeting and describes their highs and lows. So it's a way to have glue that's optional, and it's also tapping into what's going on in everyone's life. Now, this is a wild one, but the meeting facilitation rotates to every member of the family, including even the little ones. So when you have a 3-year-old facilitating the family meeting, it gets kind of interesting. But now you try, you help them because then they learn that facilitation and responsibility are things that they can learn inside the family, and it grows them up in a healthy way and everyone can participate in their success. So it rotates every week. It starts perhaps with the parents, and mom does it, dad does it, or dad does it and dad does it, or mom does it, mom does it, and they see how it's done. You follow a similar sequence, and then the older kids try, and it just keeps rotating around. And you'd be surprised how the little ones get better at it as you go along, especially with some coaching and helping, and that they learn leadership in a really healthy way. So once the highs and lows are all discussed and you've gone around the family, you can bring up issues and concerns for the week that you want to address. So everybody knows that at least, once a week they're going to bring up something that's been difficult in the family and gets addressed. So the parents, as the executive function, decide the priority. Um, uh, decides the priority of what's most important. So if, for example, something comes up about someone's coming home late every single night and disrupting everybody's sleep, well, that's going to be a priority issue for the parents to discuss with the whole family. So everything that occurs in the family is grist for the mill to be addressed. So we're eliminating the white elephants in the room that occur during the week and people going underground. So you help the family create a list of issues that they can address. And some of them might just be as simple as sibling rivalry between Sarah and John is really bad this week. What's going on? Let's talk about it as a family and see if we can resolve it. So creates the ability for the whole family to address everything that's going on in the family that has meaning, that's either giving people stress or they love that. I want to just bring up a shout out. We did really well this week with such and such. So while there is the facilitation of every member in the family, parents are still the executive function for the family. And what I mean the executive function is they execute on the rules of the family that are decided, like the core values, the mission, and the vision. They assess whether that's happening. They hold family members accountable, but they also give freedom. And so they're not dictatorial parents, they're loving and forgiving parents. So anyway, that's how it works, and the parents are facilitate. The goal is for the parents to, as the executive function, facilitate discussion, almost like you would running your own team. You want everyone to speak. For example, parents will say, okay, no one can dominate the meeting. Pretend this is like Thanksgiving, and each one of you is go around the table. You don't take all the mashed potatoes and gravy so that family member 6 doesn't get anything. You only take, if there's 6 family members, you only take 1/6 of the potato. So same with sharing. So you teach kids how to behave socially in an environment in the family meeting where they're not dominating or being silent. And so you create a culture where everyone can speak and talk and not talk too much and not talk too little so that they can be good team members when they get a little bit older. All right, so, and then there's feedback given to people in the family. And one of the feedbacks is gratitudes. So the meeting ends with everyone sharing gratitude for each other and for yourself. So you say, I really want to say that Sarah has done really well this week. She's not gotten into an argument with John all week long, and she's caught him doing some things really right and being a good family member. I want to give a shout out to her of gratitude for that. So when the gratitude happens, everyone in the family wants the gratitude too. And you give gratitude to yourself because it's not just everyone else, is to yourself. So if you have 7 family members, it takes a little while because you're giving gratitude to everyone around the room, saying something that you appreciate about that person and yourself. It's a powerful way to end the family meeting. The other thing I want to say, yeah, do you have a family meeting each week? And let's see how people respond to that. That's good. Okay, let me ask you this then. As I'm describing this family meeting, wouldn't it make a big difference in your family life if there was a family meeting, just like there's a meeting in your department at Stetson or in your business or whatever, and you could get on the same page with everyone? Makes sense, doesn't it? How many would like to have a family meeting? Yeah, yes, for sure, Rena says. Yeah. It's odd that we don't do it. We expect it at work, but we don't get any practice at home. All right, so thank you for that. I put that up there as the gold standard for you to consider maybe implementing with your partner and seeing if that could happen, because I see it as a game changer, and this gives you a template for success. And I'm sure that Alex will send this out to you if you care to implement anything. So let me jump to the next thing. The thing that I feel very strongly about is emotion coaching for kids. So it's my favorite activity with children, and it's the thing that most of us adults never got. Um, and let me explain that. So in John Gottman's work, Raising Emotionally Responsible and Resilient Children, it's helping people be okay with their children's emotions. A tantrum happens, this happens. It's an opportunity to go into the emotion, recognize it, and see what the expression means. So, in a quiet way, take the child in the other room and ask them, and honor that they have this emotional reaction, even though it may be toxic or, fingernails on the chalkboard to you. Go into the feeling. Don't tell them just to stop and shut it down. Go into it and then listen and ask them what the feeling is all about and validate that that feeling is real. It doesn't mean that it's functional, it's real and it's happening, so let's embrace it. And then label the emotions you're seeing with the words that the child would use. It's painful, it hurts. So and so's an awful person. You feel so hurt by them. Anyway, acknowledge it, because once it goes there, then you can help the child and they feel honored that you have gone with a quote negative emotion with them and you're in there in the negative emotion, and then you can process it when their emotional reaction goes down. What's an appropriate way to solve or dealing with this upsetting of feeling and or emotion for you? What would be some options for you? You can't get to that when you just say children should be heard but not seen, or seen but not heard. Okay, and a lot of us have been just discounted for our emotional reactions and our hijacking. And a lot of times, if the parent goes into the emotion with the child, they come off the cliff, get down to a place where they can actually begin to be rational with it and come up with a different way the next time that situation occurs. But you can never do it when you just try to shut it down. And I know that we all don't want to shut up. And it also doesn't mean that you become very permissive and let these events happen, because that last step, step 5, is help the child discover appropriate ways to solve the problem with a different kind of expression so it doesn't happen again. And so there's some coaching going on that the emotions are okay, but maybe the reactions are not good. But let's honor the emotions. Let's go into, let's find other ways to move, to find out what the emotion is about and move the situation forward as a problem solving opportunity. Does that make sense to everybody? I mean, chat in if that's something you do as a parent, and you'll sit and listen to a hijacked child in a hijacked emotional state to help them understand what's going on, and you understand them and talk to them in simple terms. No chatting about that. Anyway, if you want to read the fantastic book by the Gottmans, is Raise an Emotionally Resilient Child, and it gives you all kinds of tips on how to do emotion coaching. I always like to put that in there because I think it's one thing that sometimes we have a hard time with as parents. All right, so these are issues you all brought up last week. What I'd like to do, since these are current issues with you, if you brought up this question or anybody has some advice or some strategy, let's look at the first one. The adult balancing act. Being a parent, being an employee, being a business owner, being a spouse with everyone at home. What have you done in this last 9 weeks to cope with that? I'd love to hear how people have coped with this whole family system being under one roof with all these different roles that everybody's playing. Anybody thought about how they've balanced all the different roles of everybody in the house? What's been your strategy? Run away? How do I get out of here?
Yeah. So I'll jump in really quick while some folks write in and share their comments. So actually, Mark, Amy Datis in our office, one of the questions that her and I had talked about, and I think she kind of posed it last week, was, balancing being a full-time employee and a full-time parent and now a teacher at home too. And she actually wasn't able to join tonight because she's got all kinds of other kid things going on. So and we talked a little bit last week though, and she said, we're lucky at Stetson where we have flexible hours in the summer, so we can work a little more on certain days of the week if we need to take off early on a Friday or take a Monday off, however it works out to where you're still working your full-time hours week, but we can kind of flex that. And I know she kind of brought up to us in our group that she'll work a little more this day so that she can have Friday to do more things with her kids, more outdoor activities or whatever that may be. But that's kind of how she's taken that advantage of that opportunity from Stetson to kind of take that back home and come up with a plan for her.
So go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
Oh, it's echoing. So Rena posed something which is a very common situation that puts the spousal couple at risk because there's so many things to do in the family that the spousal relationship gets put on the back burner because there's parenting, there's teaching, there's work. And so what I find happens is that then there's marital or partner distress because that part of the relationship has not been rejuvenated there. And so one of the things I do as a family therapist when this inevitably happens, the couple gets in a situation where they're doing all the work in the family and they come last, is when they come in to my office. I usually have them come in the late afternoon. We have our session and then they go out to dinner. And so they create at least a monthly date, a weekly date where there's a date where there's no interference with the kids, with aging parents or jobs, and you literally move into intentionally reinforcing and rejuvenating the spousal relationship because that's one of the most obvious things that happens to most couples in a family is the work supersedes their relationship. So it's important to get that back. So I appreciate that comment. What are some of the other ones? I didn't see them. They zipped on past, Alex.
So we do have one. Our kids are 19 and 22. The 19-year-old is home from FSU. It was difficult for everyone at first, but we are all adjusting. There are still moments of conflict, but we are trying to communicate more so that we are all balancing and adjusting to the change for all of us.
I think the hardest, go ahead. I was going to say, I think the hardest age is when college students come home. It's always hard in the summer. It's always hard in the holidays because they've had absolute freedom at college. And I always see this when I was doing counseling at the counseling center because the evolution of the relationship is that you've got adults in the house who've had freedom and then coming back to a rule order of the origin family just doesn't work. But the only problem is that doesn't turn off the parent worry machine. So if somebody's out till 3 o'clock in the morning in a pandemic, that parent doesn't get any sleep because 21 or 20 or 18 or 19 or 23 or not, it still pushes the worry button for the parent. And it becomes something that has to be dealt with by the family. And sensitively and caringly and say, look, I'm a parent. I can't help but worrying. Can we negotiate your time coming in so I can get some sleep? I'm working on it. I'm trying to change it. I know when you're off to school, it's total freedom, and I have no right to put those boundaries back up, but I'm putting them up because I'm scared to death. I'm worried. And so, yeah, and that's frightening. So that's I think the hardest time is when you have a college student returning home because they're used to being an adult. And so then it's a really important transition in the relationship. Well, how are you going to go? How are you going to live with two adults in the family, in the house at the same time? Well, in a lot of it, kids who are 21 or adults that are 21 at families, I'll work with a family that they develop a contract together. a contract for what the expectations in coming in and contributing to the family, contributing to the economics of the family, whether that's paying rent or whatever, or doing the dishes, or not expecting everything to be done and having total liberty. But let's have a contract of what this is going to be like. So we're two adults living in the house and it's an untenable situation, but here we are. How are we going to make it work? So I usually help families with young adults do some contracting so that the expectations are clear. There's freedoms, responsibilities on everyone's part, and it's a wonderful opportunity to evolve the adult relationship to one that's equal, with responsibilities and freedom on both parts. So it's really the evolution of the relationship. And when the student comes home, there's that opportunity to change that dynamic from one of top down parent to son or daughter, but parent, adult to adult communication, and providing a contract going both ways, where you almost like you would have in a business between two equal individuals. So that's my recommendation with that, because it's the toughest time. And I used to deal with that all the time, with students complaining about the parents reinforcing old rules when they lived in total freedom, and parents wanting to enforce rules for their own sense of protection and safety, and getting over that dynamic. The hardest thing right now is meal planning. Oh my gosh, you may have a pescatarian, a vegetarian, and a vegan. I don't know what you do with that, but I think the most fun thing to do with meal planning is to rotate it around others' needs, and have everybody have an opportunity to produce the meal, and produce the meal in a way that is acceptable to the other people. If it's one family member is a vegetarian, then you've got to figure out to make a tasty vegetarian meal. If one member is a meat eater or a pescatarian, then you have to work around that. Will you have an alternative dish for the person who doesn't have red meat? Blah, blah, blah. But the meal planning, if it rotates, can be really, really fun, because then you can have teams within the family that partner to create a meal together, and it's kind of a creative, fun opportunity. Is there anything else I missed, Alex, on the questions?
Yeah, we got a couple more good comments. I'll read two of them to you first, and then we'll come back for a few more. So we have one: with working out of the same home office with my husband on conference calls a lot, it takes creative scheduling with webinars and team meetings to avoid talking over each other all the time. And then we have another one: my spouse doesn't think I balance my roles too well. I guess I spend a little too much time working.
Okay, so I'm working with someone right now who, a husband and wife, are working, and her role is she's in customer service, and on the phone making 50 calls a day to find out customer um, satisfaction in the business she's working. And her husband also needs the time. So and I've watched this on their video chat. So she has some customers in the Eastern time zone, the Middle America time zone, the West time zone. And she brought it up with the CEO: is, I'm a new mom. I got a child at home. My husband's working from home. Can I work this out with you? And so the CEO sat and problem solved with her. So it meets the schedule of the child sleeping, it meets her schedule of what she needs to get, and her husband. So that was the rock star response, in my opinion, is to ask the supervisor, hey, can we work this out together? Because you shouldn't just be by default saying, I'm gonna do what I can at home and just do it all. Work it out with your supervisor. Say, hey, there's a dilemma at home. We're both trying to work from home, share the same space. Can we work this in some kind of way where it's amenable? And I think most supervisors at Stetson will be agreeable to problem solve with you on balancing that, your work schedule with your spouse or your partner, and try to work it through with you. I think that's lovely. What was the other one, Alex?
We had that one, and then there was my spouse doesn't think I balance my roles too well. I guess I spend a little too much time working.
So I would say for you, if you agree with your spouse's perception, sit down with your spouse and problem solve what you would be comfortable with working a little bit less and negotiate that difference so that partner doesn't feel like they're doing all the work in the household while you're at work. So because this is an issue, then it's a great opportunity for you guys to problem solve how that will work. How will that, because obviously that spouse feels they're carrying a burden somewhere else where um, you're carrying the work burden, but it needs to be renegotiated. What a great opportunity. That's what coupling is all about, is renegotiating boundaries. And you have to be comfortable with what's possible to do at your work as well. Maybe your work demands 50 hours a week or whatever, but all that becomes a discussion and a way to try to meet both persons' needs. Um, Great. Some other comments came rolling in. I think people really like the renegotiation on an equal basis with the adult child living at home. I saw a
Yeah,
lot of comments coming in. I think people are experiencing that a lot.
and we did have one really great question, I think, here. So it was, we had talked about an adult or a parent being worried about their children right now. And this comment and question is, what about if it's the other way around? Adult children worried about their parents not being very careful right now.
I've got that situation. I have some adult children saying, well, dad's is not doing anything. He's living like he's 70 years old, like nothing's going different. And the best you can do when someone's behavior is bothering you is, in my opinion, and I used to teach this to the students I work with, they come in and say, I'm so worried about my friend. All they're doing is, they're really stuck in their eating disorder, or they're so addicted to this boy, it's really unhealthy. He yells and screams at her. All you can do is say, hey, Dad, I'm really worried about you. I'm taking protective measures and you're in a danger category, and it seems like you're just blowing that off. I just wanted to say it would really hurt me deeply if I lost you to this condition, this pandemic, this virus, because you're acting as if you're immune to the problem. And I'm carrying it around with me, and I love you, and I don't want to lose you. And I think that's the only way you're going to be able to express it. It can't be as a dictation. It has to be coming from the heart that you're deathly afraid of losing that. So sometimes a parent will listen to that, or they won't listen to the other, two instructions, or their kid trying to tell them what to do. But if you're speaking from the heart and you're worried about losing that person, which is fundamentally underneath your concern, is that's what you have to express. And then unfortunately, got to let it go. If they don't change their behavior based on that, it's not unlike an alcoholic who can't stop drinking, or a person who's addicted to a relationship that can't get out of it. I mean, the best you can do is express your worry and concern and love, and let it go. All right. Letting go is tough, really hard. And so, you can continue to express your worry over and over again until maybe it doesn't go on deaf ears. All right, so we have caring for elderly parents remotely. Anybody have that circumstance going on? While you're chatting in about that, I want to tell you a lovely story that I heard. This 2-year-old or maybe he's only 16, in New Hampshire, started hearing on the news and from his family and friends that there were people in the hospital and nursing homes that had no way to communicate with family members because they didn't have any technology. And so he went upon himself to look and gather old iPads, phones, and everything to give to people in nursing homes and people in the hospital who didn't have access to technology. And in one case, this will break your heart. In one case, this young man gave this family an iPad, and same so in the hospital, and the family could watch while the priest administered last rites for their family member. So you don't know about some of these things where you can't say goodbye or be there with your isolated family members. And this kid took it upon himself to solve the problem in New Hampshire. And it spread like wildfire in New Hampshire and then down into Massachusetts. And so it's a lovely story of um, providing technology to people who are isolated in the hospital and nursing homes. So that's taking the needs while maintaining your self-care too, and taking care of elderly parents remotely. I love this young man's solution. Um, it's sad, you can't be with your elderly parents, particularly if they're in a setting where they're isolated. So the best you can have is some kind of capacity to have Zoom, but you also have to have plans on how long the calls are going to be, how often they're going to be, along with your scheduling. So you've got all these other things to balance and juggle, and elderly parents are in that as well, and they're remote, so you've got to have a plan for that. How often? Is it every other day, every day? Are they in dire medical condition where you need to make it 2, 3 times a day? But you have to do it with the level at which you're comfortable, and to connect. That's what I would say about that. Same with balancing your needs and rest while maintaining your self care. Probably the most important thing is your self care. You're no good to anyone else if you're sick and going to get sick and not be able to do all the things for other people that you want to do. Anybody else have some chats about anything I'm talking about?
We did have a couple good comments come in. One is Caitlin says she's been helping take care of her grandmother. She has dementia, so it's been difficult keeping her in check because she constantly forgets about the virus and why she can't go out to the store.
Yeah, that's rough. My mom had Alzheimer's and died of it. And my favorite book, Caitlin, on that was the 36-hour day. I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but if you're doing any care with anyone with cognitive disorders or dementia or Alzheimer's, that's the 36-hour day says it all. And it's a very, very helpful book to help guide you through distraction techniques, other things you can do to reminisce with them, to move them back into a happier time of their lives. And that long-term memory is usually intact, and that is a really good distraction technique. So there are a number of things you can do, and that book is just filled with tips to deal with the cruelty of Alzheimer's.
And then we did have another good comment come in when you asked about caring for an elderly parent or relative. And we have, yes, my husband brings them food, but I haven't seen my parents, ages 92 and 90, since the beginning of March, as I'm not going out due to concerns for my own health, but it's been very difficult emotionally.
Can your husband bring an iPad over and you Zoom call in or use whatever technology so that you can, in your quarantining and your sheltering at home, have a daily conversation with your parents? Because that level of disconnect is really, really tough. And Joan said, I Zoom with my elderly parents and call them often. I think that will help soothe your aching heart for your parents at the same time while you're taking care of yourself. Running a business while caring for a special needs child without support of caregivers and teachers. Okay, wow. Geez, that's tough if you're doing it by yourself. Hopefully, you tag team with someone else. Um, and there's someone else who helps. Unfortunately, sometimes it could be an older child, a more responsible child. If it's, if there's a child over 12 years old, you don't want to have the child become parentified, meaning, an adult status and a parent status, because it robs them of their own childhood. But to have them in a role where they can be helpful to the special needs child with support, that could be really, really great. So if there's an older child in the home that wants to assume a little more responsibility, that responsibility can be given to that child as long as they don't become a parent of that child and undermine their own self-development, etc. So they can't be relied upon about that, but they can be relied on and be responsible, caring, loving family member to help out if that's possible. All right, bye, Joan. Staying centered and sane with the overwhelm. I'm going to say, see last week's session on stress management and play that one over and over in practice. Any other questions for me about the family meaning, cohesion, adaptability, some of what you learned tonight? Has this been valuable to you? Have we addressed all your questions and concerns? I think the highlight of the evening is the 21-year-old who comes home, and what do I do about that? Mm-hmm. I'm listening. Mm-hmm.
I have one comment just come in. My relatives are in a city with a very difficult epidemiological situation. I call to support them, but it can be very hard to process the explosive nature of the virus there and their concerns.
Yeah, because I bet they're emotionally charged and really worried and scared. All I can tell you is that the best thing to do is just to listen, to reflect their feelings, to paraphrase what they say. Don't offer any solutions. They're in an emotionally charged situation which just wants understanding and listening, validation, and appreciation for their difficult circumstances. They typically don't want a solution. They just want to be validated that this is incredibly hard and to have a loving, listening family member from far away play that role of a great listener. Is there's nothing better in the world that you can do. Anything else, Alex?
Does anybody have any other closing comments or questions from Mark tonight?
I'll just offer, like I did last week, if you want to share or ask me a question offline that you don't want to share publicly, I was able to meet with someone last week. I won't say who, but to address, personal circumstances of something they wanted. So happily to oblige you with that. All you need to do is go to the first page where my email address is and send me a question or something that you want to chat about.